This is AV SuperFriends On Topic, a 30-minute monthly roundtable focused on a single topic. This discussion will be opinionated, to the point, and saturated with our well-known blend of painfully won expertise and deeply ingrained immaturity. For January 2021, this is AV SuperFriends On Topic. Well, welcome back, everybody. My name's Chris Dector. I'm here with Larry, Jamie, Mark, Rachel, and Justin. And hey, we did it. It's 2021. Everything bad from 2020 is over. It's all done. It's not. Crap. Well, we'll figure it out and get through it just like we did last year. So let's start 2021 right. One quick note of self-promotion. In addition to this monthly show that you're listening to right now, we also do a semi-monthly, and that's every 2 weeks because I've looked it up. We do a semi-monthly podcast called AV SuperFriends Off the Rails. It's longer in format. It's wider ranging. We kind of go all over the place. You can find that over at avsuperfriends.com or wherever you get your podcasts. So this month's topic for On Topic is planning for summer. It's January. We need to start thinking about summer because that's how the seasons work. Well, maybe they do in AV. But before we get into planning for summer, I do want to mention something that's been bothering me for a number of years. You know, actually, in retrospect, this has been bothering me for about 15 years. And we've all seen it. Maybe not at our institutions directly, maybe not something we've been personally involved in, but we're all familiar with it, and it has to stop. The classroom of the future. It's a terrible thing. The concept is, this is an experimental space that will purportedly be the model of teaching spaces in the coming years. I mean, and that's great. I mean it. This is a great idea. You should absolutely have an experimental space for trying new technologies and teaching methods. But the name, Classroom of the Future, it just screams being out of touch, especially when you consider the average classroom AV project taking, 6, 9, 12, 15 months? So now it's done. It's the future, and you're installing stuff you specified a year ago. That said, these Classroom of the Future spaces are usually fraught with problems. For example, I read about a local college who was crowing about building out a whole bunch of spaces as classrooms of the future when all they really did was add Cisco codecs to each one. Now, and this was 2020, mind you. So congratulations, you've discovered 2005. And frankly, basing your entire classroom AV system around very expensive appliances like that is just a bad idea. And frankly, it can be a gross misuse of funds. And if 2020 has illustrated nothing else, you don't need proprietary video hardware to make a call. And most of us were onto that little secret years ago. So my issue with these sorts of spaces is they always seem to be based on things from 10 years ago. Simply taking a technology you already have and already use and just going big and fancy with it because you have special one-time funds doesn't mean you've invented an entire new type of classroom. Cramming so much stuff into the room that instructors need a full production crew and advanced astronaut training just to teach effectively is not a good way to go about things. And don't get me started on all the former TV broadcast engineers who salivate at the opportunity to install 47 PTZ cameras in a classroom and call it a day. Spaces like these are generally designed by committee, almost always without the input of support staff. We're going to have to keep this space operating for the next couple of years, and at least until everyone recognizes it was a terrible idea and you scrap it all at the end of the day. Most classrooms of the future don't scale and thus don't accurately reflect what's going to be widespread use in the near term. In fact, most of them seem to be specific visions of a few people generating rooms filled with a whole mess of random stuff that they saw at a conference. Alternatively, these spaces serve only for someone to write an article. And no, we're not going to standardize on ultra short throw projectors or interactive displays. Those are niche items and they're generally terrible. Okay, so I hear what you're saying. All right, smart guy. So what is a classroom of the future? Well, I don't have an answer for that, but that's a good thing. It's something different for every school and should reflect the faculty and students of that particular institution. However, I can make a few general suggestions. First of all, focus on your pedagogy and content, and then determine the right solutions to deliver that most effectively. Start by talking with your instructors and get them involved early. Have your IT support group at the table from the very beginning. Get your instructional designers involved so the pedagogy and technology have a cohesive approach. And this is 2020, so design the system so there's an equity of experience between in-class students and online students. And speaking of technologies, here's a few freebies. Look at digital canvas displays, easy file sharing, easy screen sharing using existing accounts, no added hurdles or hoops to jump through. You don't need to have your students sign up for yet another account just to use your screen sharing software. And whatever you pick, whatever you do, it must integrate with your existing campus LMS. Again, it's 2020, so you want hybrid capabilities, but look for invisible cameras. And when I say invisible, I really mean low profile cameras or installed in such a way that they're not like a distracting nuisance spinning all over the place as they auto track everything. Also use low profile microphones. Heck, use the mics the students bring with them. They've got mics on their smartphones and they're on Wi-Fi anyway, so why not tap into those? So regardless of what specific technology you're adding, use established best practices on image sizes and audio coverage. Frankly, you should be doing that already. And finally, unless you've got really, really deep pockets, you're not going to be re-engineering and physically building new structures. So chances are you're just modifying existing space that's already based on the Victorian model of a classroom. So might as well work within those boundaries to create a new twist on teaching and learning. New cars don't drastically change the driving experience, but they still seem like they're from the Jetsons. Fundamentally, you still get in, sit down, and you're off on the road within 2 minutes. So think about that in your classrooms. Instructors are experts in their field. They don't necessarily want to stand behind something that looks like NASA mission control. And finally, if you already have a classroom of the future on your campus, change the name. Or, better yet, put your name next to it and the date you created it so we know who was responsible. So what say you all, Super Friends?
I think the key for me in that whole rant was when you were talking about almost a sandbox classroom. I think in order to be innovative, you have to have a safe place to fail. And whenever we spend a lot of money and build a classroom of the future, the last thing that really expensive classroom can do and that instructor can do is fail. So we're not really pushing innovation and pushing new learning experiences. We're just putting a lot of expensive gear in a room and demanding perfection from a space.
I thought that was an absolute word, Chris. Like, I could not agree with you more. It's the very phrase classroom of the future is very Epcot Center. You know, it's very like the future as we envisioned it in the 1950s. Like it makes me think of the farm or the future at the vacation of the future that you see when you go on that rickety ride that was envisioned by a proto-Nazi in 1952. Like there's nothing futuristic about it. It's retro future. Whereas when you say sandbox classroom, that makes sense. That is about play and experimentation and learning. And I also think that your point, Larry, about how that's where innovation comes from is key. Somebody asked me recently if I thought that the explosion of lecture capture technology in the wake of COVID was driving higher education pedagogy away from active learning. And I thought, well, gosh, if it is, something has gone horribly wrong. Because the technology that we integrate should never drive the pedagogy that takes place in a classroom. That's so backwards. And if you're designing something that you're calling the classroom of the future, then you're making implicitly a call about what the pedagogy of the future is.
I think it's okay to have like a folder on your shared drive somewhere at work where you're actively storing ideas for possible options for your sandbox or quote unquote classrooms of the future. And I think, having an idea of what people may want to be able to try so that you're not really baking it into a standard. You don't have a standard called classroom of the future. If you do, awesome. But I can't imagine that's something that we all kind of roll out there, but an active list of requests that people are coming in, and you can kind of title that folder classroom of the future or ideas for the future or things to sandbox or things to try, taste test, whatever it may be, so that when vendors call you and say, hey, what are you guys looking to do over the next 24 months? You can say, we're really trying to maybe think about doing this or this or this. Do you have any options there? Then you can have some more informed conversation about what the trends may be and let that be kind of your, free version of things you want to do versus committing to spaces for trying things out. Just kind of, have it for conversation and then take it from there.
So I've been at WKU for almost 20 years now, and I've been asked to design the classroom of the future multiple times in multiple years, probably a handful of times. And I believe that my response was exactly what Chris said. I think Chris stole it from me somehow over all the years I've said this. And really kind of jumping to that sandbox thing, one thing I want to note, there's been a big push to test almost everything on campus before we install it, which is, microphone's a microphone. In essence, you have specs and we all can perceive what something's going to do based upon the specifications. So we can't really test everything before we put it in a classroom. But at the same time, when you do test those new one-off things that are cool gadgets, make sure you don't test it once and then call it a day. Because there's plenty of times where we are asked as technology managers by certain individuals, maybe at institutions, to test something. And there's no real parameters around it. And what I want and what I've been pushing for at WKU is let's test all these gadgets together, because if you test one thing of a design, that doesn't mean anything. And let's see how long it works, because just because it worked day one does not mean it works day two. And is that sustainable?
And if we're talking about a classroom, a sandbox classroom, it shouldn't just be the classroom technology managers testing the equipment, because we're talking about the learning experience, and we need students, we need instructors, we need the whole gamut.
Oh, you mean an
to
audience?
test
An audience
and
is
find out
important
what
for testing? Wow.
Exactly. They're part of the experience.
Wow.
We need to find out how this functions in a classroom and how it affects the learning experience.
And, it's hard to get a classroom because space is at a premium at universities. But you just find a 30 by 30 room that replicates your average classroom with your block walls, may or may not have carpet, run the metrics to see what is mostly out there, and make sure it has a drop ceiling if all your rooms have drop ceilings. If all your rooms, God forbid, are open ceilings, then you need to test in that, because the environment is really big to test this gear in.
You should have an idea of what you're solving for, though, too. Like, it's not about like the widget. Like, can you find a way to use this widget? Great. Like, how many manufacturers ship you things? Here, test this out. It's like, you're giving me something for a solve that I've already solved this problem. Why am I going to take everything I deployed back to put your new widget out there? Like, don't give me things that already exist. Yeah.
Yeah. I got an IP. Now what, what's next? Right.
Yeah. And I think some of it too, it really comes down to lazy marketing, right? The lazy marketing of your room, the lazy marketing of your program, the lazy marketing. And really, I don't have a lot more to add to it, except that I kind of wish I had a soundboard with a bunch of buttons from, like, the church scenes in movies where it says hallelujah and amen, brother, and preach. That's really what I
mean, we can have that soundboard now because you just provided all those clips for us. So thank you for that, Jamie. I just wanted to keep
mashing those buttons, everything you said, and I agree with it, but I think ultimately it is that lazy marketing. It is that lazy.
This just in, Chris. I got an academic building with 35 classrooms of the future. Can you help me design those, please?
Yeah, they're fantastic.
I will tell you guys, in defense of that, in defense of the classroom of the future, it's not just the marketers that are lazy. It's people's lazy, stupid brains. From back in my event planning days, I can tell you any event, no matter what it was about, that had the word future in the title would get twice the registration of any event that didn't include the word future, because we are animals who have Pavlovian responses to words like future and just go nifty and mash the button.
So there you go, Mark, on your new building. Just say it's the building of the future, but just do it normally.
Done.
I need to get a wallet of the future that's loaded with cash.
Yeah, it's the building of the future.
That question,
rooms of the future with the best of.
When someone asks me that question now, my next question is, what do you want this thing to do? What do you want the classroom of the future to do? Just like any other needs analysis.
It's got to solve all the future problems. We don't even know the problems yet. It's too early.
And they never know what the answer is. They don't have a response. Like, well, I don't know. Like, well, you want me to throw a dinosaur in there or a giraffe?
The donor said, we want classrooms of the future.
Is that available? Can I have a dinosaur?
Yeah.
I hate to tell you this. Dinosaurs aren't the future.
They could be. You don't know. Have you watched
Jurassic Park has lied to me.
All right.
I'm telling you.
This has been a very focused conversation. Good job, guys.
Well, brother Chris, what do you think?
So we need to start planning for the future by planning for the summer, but let's take a quick break first.
Believe it or not, this show is actually as disciplined as we get when talking about our industry. If you'd like to hear more, let's say, unfiltered content from the AV SuperFriends, then head over to avsuperfriends.com and check out our other show, Off the Rails. Join Chris, Mark, Justin, Larry, Rachel, and I as we dig into the different aspects of higher ed AV. We'll also chat about pedagogy, swoon over the shiny new gadgets, and see what other interesting topics we pull out of the mailbag. That's Off the Rails and found on our website at avsuperfriends.com.
So the topic of discussion for this month's show is planning for summer. Well, and we were discussing this internally a few minutes ago and trying to figure out how we best approach this, because planning for summer means something different for everybody.
Beaches, Mai Tais.
It's January, and yeah, you think about the summer vacations and what you're doing. Yeah, our summer vacations are standing on ladders and installing things. So
Prove
at
to me that there will be a
university,
summer.
There's a summer every year. It just may be a dark summer. I guess it raises the question of project life cycle, refresh cycles. I mean, how do we do this? I mean, granted, in January you start thinking about what rooms might need refreshes, or Mark's got this brand new building going up that has nothing but classrooms of the future in it, so he's got a plan for that. But what is your approach for looking at spaces that need upgrades, or do you look at what rooms have the oldest technologies, or what rooms get used the most heavily, or how do you guys structure that at your institutions?
I think quite honestly right now, we're still in the midst of, oh my God, we got to finish it before school starts, right? For the spring term. And even though I know there's some back burner projects and I know that summer's coming, I probably won't really dig into that till February, March, with the knowledge that I've got to start procuring things shortly after that. But we don't necessarily know what our budget for us, our budget cycles. They don't even really start looking at numbers until March, so I can't even really plan on any refresh over the summer because nobody's even rectifying numbers. So I don't know if I have extra money or if I'm in the hole. I have no idea. And then the building projects are always, they've already started in November. Well, they're already we're in the holding pattern of wait until the project manager says I can come on site for summer, right? So we're just in that in between mark. I just know that I wanted to have everything, all my ducks in a row, and have products started ordering around that May mark, because anything after that you start getting into traditionally Infocom, right? And every manufacturer, they stop producing things in April and May. They just stop because they're starting their new cycle products. And I've been caught so many times where, we're going to do 80 rooms this summer. I need to buy 80 of this particular projector. You put your order in late May, early June. They send you a note back that says, well, we have 4 and they're in Taiwan. And we have these new ones that we're announcing next week, but we can't tell you anything about them. And they won't be available to you till October. Like, well, that's not going to cut it. And so I've learned my lesson the hard way about 10 years ago. So now I try to bump that up and have my orders in early, because people like Mark, like to buy everything on the planet there on the West Coast. So, but that's really my planning for summer is I haven't even started yet. I'm still trying to put out winter problems.
So we've been gathering data off of systems. We have a pretty good roadmap of what should be upgraded. Now, we'll have to be really targeted, I think. And a lot of universities, my guess, are going to have to submit their plans for things they really want to get done. And so we'll submit and say, okay, cool, we would like to refresh these rooms, but should that money not come, then we have capital projects we'll work on. But I think more importantly, we're actually taking the time between now and fall, because we're not going to have a lot of on-site and classes really happening, to do some of that deferred stuff that we would love to have gotten to, like updating UIs so we have common approaches as much as we can across the board. We're deprecating hardware capture on our campus and kind of moving to just things that make sense and create a more of a common experience because they don't cost much outside of the time. And if we have staff that can do it now, we can do it remote. We're working on it now, just kind of pruning and cleaning things up that we wish we would have had time to do before, but it's hard to change an engine out while the car's running, kind of a thing. But now we have some time, so we're taking it, and it's simple things that don't cost much but give you a more common experience across campus. Like we're focusing on those types of items, and compiling the data so that when some money tree shakes, they say, hey, we got some money, what do you want to do? We're not scrambling. We have some files ready with some Excel sheets and say, here's our targets. If we can get X amount of money, we're going to do these things. So even if you don't think you have money readily available, you should at least be putting a plan together as what you would do should you get some money.
I just want you to know,
Yeah,
Mark, that it's not very difficult to take the engine out of a car while it's still running. My brother and I learned that the hard way. If you downshift from 5 to 2 at 80-something miles an hour, you leave the engine all the way down the highway, and then your ass is walking home. But I just want you to know that, just in case you didn't know. A couple of 16-year-old country bumpkins figured that out.
Can be done. Well,
Yeah.
Mark, what kind of metrics do you use to determine your priorities?
Right now,
Like,
it's a
is
lot of
it
usage
just about
hours,
usage,
right?
or yeah?
Well, we know like installed days of classrooms, and we had all that stuff when it was deployed. And we're looking at things that are in that window that we would normally would attack, and then we're kind of correlating that against usage. So if we know it's like, okay, it was installed forever ago, but it's still functioning, unless there's some real reason like it doesn't meet these criteria, we can't do this interface, or it's just some weird experience, some anomaly, then we'll kind of reprioritize that. But trying to get things up to baseline standard as much as possible is our goal. And let's face it, we all have weird rooms that are out there that just don't meet that definition. So, looking at those spots and the older strange spaces, like, take a look at those. What can we do? And for us, we have a lot of stuff on shelves and stuff too, like, spare product that we can outfit some things. We're not necessarily having to buy everything. If we can, time was always our biggest enemy, getting access to spaces. So use what we have and look at what's being used or has been used the most and kind of target accordingly.
So I guess I'll go next.
And we have that
We
7-year replacement cycle. Oh, we've got that 7-year replacement
Guess
cycle.
not,
where we
Justin.
know
I'm
what that
holding.
we're nice.
I'm holding.
Where we know what we should be doing. And just like Mark was saying, like, we'll look at the usage, we'll look at how the room is faring, and we might bump a room up or bump a room back. But ideally, every 7 years, the classroom spaces are going to get replaced. Now, that being said, just like Jamie was saying, I typically don't start designing until after kids are back in classes in January. Once we get through the winter's rush, then I can look at that. But I've got ideas of what I want to do, where I want to do, any rooms I think need addressing that I want to try to squeeze in. I'm already putting back ideas for that. But to actually sit down, do designs, get orders together to order in March, it won't happen until January.
What's that like? So I guess I'll answer it by kind of briefly talking about our processes. We don't have a official refresh schedule. WKUIT is central to the university. However, money is not. We're just operational, right? So think of, how does an integrator plan for summer? The integrator plans for summer just like the spring and fall semester and just like winter. So we wait for projects to come in based upon a department requesting a update on their system because it's probably broke. Because at Western, people usually don't update their systems until stuff is broke or it's not being used or something's not functioning the way they need it to because of change in how they teach. So really, the easiest answer is we are currently planning for summer because we get projects in. For instance, I got 8 to 10 new Zoom room requests, then I've got to go around and evaluate the rooms and draw them up and get the equipment list together. I send that to our project manager. We formulate the estimate. The estimate goes to the client. They have to approve it. I think there's like 6 signatures or something crazy on the forms now because of COVID. That goes all the way to the top. And then once we get the approval, we order the equipment. Once it shows up, we have a brief summer-ish time that we're going to schedule it. And we've been trying to shift things from summer and winter to the semester by working with that department saying, hey, if you can move all these classes of this one classroom to these other spaces, give us a week in this room, install it, commission it, test it. Then in the middle of semester, you can hop back in that room. Some clients don't like to do that, so they push it off. So if 100% of our clients push it off till summer, we might actually be working on summer of 2022 right now. So it just depends how fast clients want things done. We also have the option of saying we can bring in extra labor, and that labor is just really grunt labor, to where we can get something installed faster. And then our programmer and our installer come back and set it up, configure it, and program it. I commission it. And we have our support team that trains on the system. And then we release that system to the end user. So that's really my summer answer, which is a little different than what you guys do.
I would say, Justin, I would lean into that thing about delayed projects and just say you're planning for summer 2022. So you guys are way ahead of the game. I would just
we are, but we're not. We also have 20-year-old projectors on campus that English is not going to be updating in the foreseeable future until they break. So
it's fine.
We are planning, but I wish it was more. I wish we could buy in bulk, and we can't. We can get steeper discounts. I wish we could do more of the things that you all are doing, standardizing classrooms. The only way we can standardize a classroom, 30 classrooms in a building, is when they build it, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, usually classrooms are. We try to standardize on the experience and not worry so much about standardizing equipment, which, that's a balancing act, if you will.
Well, don't worry, because if Chris's predictions are true, VGA is coming back.
Sweet.
VGA Sunrise, here it is.
I can't wait.
It's retro.
Because then you will have a classroom of the
16K
future.
connector.
You will have a classroom of the future.
We still have classrooms
16K
that
on
have
15 pins. I love it.
a non-riser rated cable strapped to a conduit going up. Now, hopefully that went down with the building recently, but we'll see if there's any others.
Wait, are you saying
I don't know about?
Are you saying you demo the entire building and there may be a cable left?
Except for the VGA cable.
cable.
Yeah, that's what I'm really worried
Zombie
about.
cable.
I want to buy that.
Those are
in
thick.
Deem that one. You have to keep it.
Let's call that one that goes in the classroom of the past, right?
That's right.
Well, so it sounds like most of us.
It's probably not the answer everybody wanted, but there doesn't sound like there's a single kind of approach to this. We're kind of all over the place.
Yeah, it sounds a
know.
lot like we're a whole bunch of. It's not time to think of summer yet.
Well, and it sounds like even if it is time to think of
depends.
summer, we're not going to do it until February or March anyway. So
We already have scheduled
I would
projects
cling to Mark's
do
advice,
past
which
July.
is, you can think about thinking about summer, right? You can be prepared for when the question is asked by collecting your data, understanding your priorities, knowing what you would do if you could do it. That's the most I think anybody can accomplish right now, understanding, as we all learned this year, that the future is monumentally uncertain.
The future's a spreadsheet away. Get your spreadsheets all dialed in, because once it happens, they're going to want to see your spreadsheet.
Not in my classroom.
And
That's
probably
merch. The
probably
future's a spreadsheet away. How inspirational.
And I'm just going to brag a little bit. We
I
don't
want that on
plan
a
for
poster.
winter. Yeah, we don't plan for winter because guess what today is? Can y'all guess what today is for me at WKU?
Your last day at work?
Friday.
My last day of the year. So we have 2 to 3 weeks off ever since I've been at
that's
Western
right.
for the past 20 years, where we don't have to take vacation time. The university closes, no one works, and we get to play chess or checkers or have happy fun time or whatever you want to do.
Tell me more about this happy fun time.
Yeah.
Oh, it
Is that
involves
similar to
No,
grab
please don't.
ass?
a
Please don't.
numerous amount of things that I can't talk about on this show.
All right. I think with that, it's time for a short break, and we'll come back with a quick lightning round.
Do you have a question for the AV SuperFriends, a topic to suggest, or were we just really, really wrong on something and you'd like to give us a piece of your mind? Well, don't just yell at your computer. Send us an email and we'll actually read it. Mailbag@avsuperfriends.com. We're always looking for good ideas to steal, discuss openly. And if your message is just full of great stuff, we might just invite you on the show. Mailbag at avsuperfriends.com.
All right. So I think this is very relevant to everything we were just talking about with how we plan for the future. You were saying a lot of you don't even have budgets yet. This is something I've been asked a couple of times over the past week. Do we think that as the pandemic ends and everybody comes back physically on campus, that we're going to see more investment in classroom technology in higher education institutions, or is it going to cool off a bit after the rush to add tech to address COVID? Mark, let's start with you.
I think you will have a fair amount of spending, but I think it's not going to be kind of broad brush strokes kind of an approach where I think it's going to be a little more targeted. And I think a lot of administrators are going to want to have really solid plans of what they're getting out of the spend from an experience up front. So where maybe we had days where you had these set block budgets, you may not get that same block of money where they're going to want to say, okay, well, what are your active projects you're going to target for your budgets this year? And what are you going to do? And how does that actually correlate to the experience of the student? So I think there's kind of a little bit more of a reciprocal approach. Like what are we getting from a university standpoint with this money? And if it's being used for student experience specifically, I think the money will be there for budgets. I don't know if we'll see the same thing for just kind of like generic funding. I think you're going to see a lot more targeted base.
I believe that.
So you think that?
I believe that.
Go, Jamie.
I believe that what we're going to see is technically an increase in spending. But that increase in spending will be skewed by the fact that they cut so much over the last couple of years that you're really just back to medium. Because for us, that would be a big deal to get back to where we were before cutting. Would be a giant ordeal for us. And so I think spending will increase, but not because it's spending to spend money and because there's more money available. It's more of course correction spending.
Yeah, I think money overall from a university to external, whatever you want to call it, I think it's going to stay about the same. I believe that, when you're talking about maybe AV and IT, I see it going up a little bit. I don't know how soon that might be for WKU. When all this hit, we literally shut off every credit card, and all purchases down to 25 cents had to be authorized by the highest people on campus. I don't even know really how many that was. So that loosened up a little bit. We had a van die that we had to wait 3 or 4 days for the money to come open and available for us to spend to get our van fixed. So those things are over and done. It just depends on, I think, what the strategy is of the university. Or is WKU, for instance, going to keep doing what they're doing because we have this ramp budget model where everything is decentralized. So unless departments get more money, they're not going to spend more on AV. But I think the indicator will be for us, and I think for a lot of universities, when you see spending coming back or going or increasing, if you will, when do we start ramping up our human resources, our labor? Because that's the first thing that went. We started cutting labor 2 years ago, and we haven't had raises in a while, and we have open positions that aren't being filled because of hiring freezes. That's the green light on when spending will start opening up. And a lot of it has to do with our government and our state governments, right? So just depends.
I can see spending staying down, even if things look like they're returning to normal, simply because there's so much uncertainty right now. Like, we don't know what enrollment's going to look like. We don't know what the long-term effects of what the past year are going to ultimately hold. And so
it's behind versus the private market. You're right. I mean, they lag in economies, right?
And so I can definitely see them taking a very cautious approach this next year, just to make sure that they're able to weather the dip that we're in and then slowly build back. But I'm I'm cautious that I will get the full replacement cycle budget that I'm expecting, and I'm planning to try to stretch those and keep a buffer there just in case I don't get it all.
This is fascinating to me. Chris, bring us home.
Well, so yeah, generally, I think the answer is yes and no. We're going to see general, I guess, let me phrase it differently. The general budgets will be reduced, general AV budget. So, hey, cut 5, 10, 15% off your general AV budget to do more with less, as we've all been discussing. However, there will be more money, and there is more money for things directly related to hybrid teaching, UCC, the streaming services, that sort of thing is now seen as a legitimate expense. You no longer have to convince people that, oh, we're building a classroom and maybe we'll add video conferencing capability. No, we don't need that. We'll just do local presentation. Well, now they know, no, it has to have that capability. And those of us in the AV industry know that's not a huge expense to do that if you do it right. So it depends on how you categorize those things, but I think there will be a increase in funds available for that type of space, that type of technology. Whether that goes, that's widespread, and we see that everywhere, but that's certainly what I'm hearing and what we're planning for, for 2021 and beyond.
So our consensus here is that we're seeing spending continuing, like getting the budget continuing to be a challenge. It's always an open question, but when it comes to improving the experience in order to guarantee business continuity, there's gonna be money there. Well, guys, absolutely. I think once again we've figured it out,
and we managed to stay on topic.
Thanks for putting up with yet another episode of AV SuperFriends On Topic. You can contact us with questions, topic ideas, or general complaints at avsuperfriends.com.
Nice work, everyone. Sharp broadcast. Really good. Everyone on the floor as well. Really a lot of hustle. I liked it.
The opinions expressed by the AV SuperFriends are solely those of the individuals and do not represent their respective institutions, organizations, companies, or clients.